Hello, everyone. I am Ali Pompadith, founder and CEO of the SOAR Community Network and co-founder of SOAR Nebula. Our work is to develop transcendent leaders who are contributing to a more compassionate, cohesive, and collaborative, what we call a C3 world. Thank you for tuning in to our Nebula Change Agent series, where we bring you compassionate and transcendent leaders from around the world who are creating positive impact in their communities and for our society. Today, we're interviewing Paul Rice. Hi, Paul. Thanks for being with us again.
Hi, it's great to be back.
Thank you so much for saying yes again to being a part of this interview series and being the change agent for a better world. People say that being a change agent, being a transcendent leader, being compassionate should come naturally. But if we haven't been raised in a society where that was looked upon as a good thing, it can take some rewiring and some learning. So I wanted you to be one of our first to come back as we reboot our Change Agent series to talk about this kind of leadership and how powerful it is that you can be a powerful leader and be transcendent and be compassionate and have empathy. So please say hello to our audience and tell us a little bit about the work that you do in the world and also where you're dialing in from.
Okay, well, thanks. It's wonderful to be back and wonderful to have a chance to connect with this extraordinary community that you're building. I have been passionate about social justice and sustainability and making the world better since I was a little kid. I was raised by a single mom who had strong social values, who cared about the world, and who taught me to care as well. And so, for as long as I've known, as long as I can remember, I've wanted to make a difference. It's that simple. And so, when I was a college student, I became an activist and joined a lot of causes and participated in a lot of movements. And when I graduated from college at the tender age of 22, I decided that my calling was to go off and join the Nicaraguan Revolution. So I went to Nicaragua in 1983 and spent 11 years in the mountains there, organizing small farmers into cooperatives and helping them develop their communities and improve their livelihoods. And it was there that I kind of discovered the power of business as a force for good. I think many of us see the problems with the business community, the problems with corporate greed and the fallout in terms of the environment and climate change and poverty and so on. But I also discovered in that journey that business can be a powerful force for good. I started Nicaragua's first fair trade coffee co-op and organized 3,000 families into a cooperative that was processing coffee beans and exporting direct to fair trade buyers in Europe. And as a result of that more direct and equitable trade relationship, we got our farmers literally 10 times more for their coffee beans than what they were getting in the local market. And so that really just started a journey of curiosity and exploration for me about how to harness the power of the market and how to enlist the support of companies and consumers to this task of making the world better. And it led me to come back to the US in 1998 and start Fair Trade USA, which is kind of the hub of the fair trade movement here in the United States. And I'm still here 22 years later, leading Fair Trade USA. We have over 1,000 amazing companies working with us, from Whole Foods to Walmart and Target and Costco, and great brands. We're certifying not just coffee now, but also tea and chocolate and fresh fruits and vegetables and apparel and fish. We generated last year over $100 million in above market premium pricing for farmers and workers around the world. And they were able to use that money to invest in improving their lives and in protecting the environment in which they live. 63% of consumers now know about fair trade. So it feels like not just a way to support farmers and workers around the world, but also a way to empower you and me as everyday consumers to change the world one purchase at a time. So I feel like the world's luckiest guy because I get to work at, a place that is my life's calling. And I love my job and I love my life and I love being a part of a movement that's making the world better.
Oh my goodness, what an inspiration. I love this mindset that you have also. I mean, it started when you were way young. You've been there for over 20 plus years and you stayed the course, knowing and believing in this movement, in this cause, and to make everybody, wherever they are in the world, give them an opportunity. And with COVID being where we are, and I wanted to timestamp this interview, in 2020, the world stopped. And yet you just told me in 2020 what took place through your organization and how many people and communities and tribes you've been able to support through the pandemic. So what do you attribute to when it comes to the work, your team? How could something like COVID, as big as it was, how could you get the outcome that you did get? What do you think that came from?
Well, that's a great question, and I think it's the answer is twofold. On the one hand, the farmers that we work with in 46 countries in Africa, Asia, and Latin America, they typically do not have access to great medical services, to medical education or health education. And so one of the things that the Fair Trade Standard and the Fair Trade model does is it makes workplaces safer and healthier. And so we already were providing a lot of training to farmers around workplace safety and health, as well as factory workers, because we are in the apparel industry. We certify about 100 factories now, and mostly in Asia, but also in Latin America. So we already had a program around worker training and also around personal protective equipment. So it was we were an easy ally for these different farming and working groups to come to and say, hey, in the age of COVID, can you help us more? And so we developed a training video, which we translated into 7 languages around COVID and COVID prevention. And we enlisted the support of our brands and our retail partners to kind of double down on their commitment to fair trade in this time of need for farmers and workers around the world. Because as you and I know, vaccination rates here in the U.S. are pretty high, but around the world, COVID is still raging. In India, in other countries, COVID is still very much a severe crisis. And so, I was just really happy to see that our producer base, 1 million families strong around the world, really looked to us for help. And then on the other side, our brand partners, our retail partners, the companies that we work with here in the U.S., they stepped up. No one left our movement during the COVID era. Now, some of those companies saw their sales go down, and so that meant they had less to send to the farmers and workers in their supply chain. Mm-hmm. But other companies, just as one example, Costco doubled its sales of fair trade fruits and vegetables last year. So it literally doubled the amount of money that it was sending back to Mexico and Central America and other countries where those fruits and vegetables are grown. So, in part, the increased impact last year was a result of the companies that we work with, and also the fact that consumers were shopping and eating at home more, right? And so, to the extent that folks were cooking more at home, they were buying more at the grocery store, and that helped our farmers.
Wow. Thank you for that global perspective. I think it's very important to keep that in mind. We are in the US in a little bubble here with our rates of vaccination being high. And the folks that you serve and the people all around the world with different countries, we have to be mindful that the struggle is still very real. Yeah. So what I'd like to do is the journey has been so incredible so far, your journey and the journey of Fair Trade USA. Now, let's talk about your personal inspirations and motivations. I'd love for you to share with our audience, when you think back in your life, Paul, and you look and see who and what and why life has led you to be the person you are, to be the leader you are. Is there anybody or a group of people that really inspired you and motivated you to stay the course on wanting to be a social impactor?
Mm. So many people. So many people who have shaped my journey and kind of fueled my tank with inspiration and insight. I'll say that, first of all those years, 11 years in the field working with farmers, was incredibly nourishing, intellectually and spiritually, because the farmers that grow our coffee, they on average, they grow coffee on 1 acre. These are very, very small farms. These are very poor farmers. Their annual income may only be $1,000 a year, right? Like $3 a day. That's very common in Latin America, in Africa, and parts of Asia. And so, I interacted with those farmers. That was like my early schooling in this world of social justice, and also in the world of kindness and compassion. And the typical small coffee farmer living up in the mountains, when they receive you, they receive you with so much love, with so much heart, and they feed you, even though they may not have an abundance of food themselves. They feed you and they welcome you. And it's that kindness and compassion and generosity that I experienced that really fueled my tank in that regard. And that anchored me in the belief that the poor are not just kind of victims of the system. And they're certainly not the passive beneficiaries of our benevolence. The poor are also active partners with us in a common effort to save the planet. They are smart, they are talented, they have hope, they have pride and dignity. And, with models like fair trade, what we're trying to do is support their entrepreneurial energy so that they can lift themselves out of poverty. And so that, if I can say, the collective, of farmers that I have had a chance to work with over the last 30 years, well, almost 40 years now, has really been, kind of the primary stamp of on my journey in terms of inspiration and in terms of understanding how I can be useful in the world. There are also individuals. I mean, my board chairman today is a fair trade tomato farmer named Ricardo Crisantes. And Ricardo and his family, I mean, it's a third generation organic tomato farming family. And he reflects in many ways what I aspire to be when I grow up. He's values centered. He's smart and creative. He's an innovator. He takes risks. He's courageous. He challenges the status quo. And those are all attributes of change-making leadership that I greatly admire and aspire to myself.
Paul, I think also the world is just ready for a rewiring of labels and definitions of what is rich and what is poor. When you look at it from a spiritual standpoint, those material things, the categories we put people into based on societal beliefs and philosophies and traditions, I think we need to just throw them in the ocean and start again, because when I've traveled around the world, it doesn't matter if you have a lot of food or a little food. When those that value community, connection, love, they'll treat you as if their home, whether it's made of bamboo and straw, is like a mansion with a red carpet, because it's about the heart of the people.
Right.
And yes. I think that's really a great point that you brought home there. This definition of poor. What is poor? Because you have people who have so much money and so much that they hold on to and hoard, that they're not gifting that and sharing it and putting that vibration out into the world, where it becomes a collective uprising and evolution where there's abundance being put out there. So thank you for that. Now, how would you say your work and who you are as a leader contributes to creating what we're calling a C3 world? How does it create more compassion in the world? How does it create more cohesion and harmony? How does it foster collaboration? And you can take that in any angle that you would like. How does your work foster a C3 world, compassionate leaders, cohesive teams, and collaborative cultures and societies?
Well, I guess I have two answers to that. The work that we're doing in the fair trade movement is very much all about supporting individuals and communities in their efforts to empower themselves and strengthen their own capacity to solve their own problems. So, moving away from the traditional kind of top-down model of international aid and charity, and this notion that we in the wealthier countries have an obligation to save the world and save the poor, right? We're trying to do something radically different, which is help individuals and communities develop the tools, the capacities that they need to harness their own entrepreneurial energy, their own ingenuity, their own creativity, and be able to kind of write their own story and improve livelihoods and sustain the environment in their own way. And so, that almost invariably is all about building local cohesion, local organization. So we work a lot with small farmers who have organized into small farmer co-ops, and there's a real logic to cooperation because if you have 1 acre of land and you're only producing a couple of thousand pounds of coffee a year, you don't have the size or the scale to do your own processing and your own milling and your own trucking and your own exporting. And so there's an economic logic to joining with your neighbors and building a cohesive economic unit that will allow you to achieve economies of scale and be an efficient business and be a player in the international market. I mean, I learned that in the early 90s, leading that co-op of 3,000 small farmers who individually were pretty much going to be the victims of local money lenders and local coffee buyers. But together, they became an international force to be reckoned with. And I'm really proud to report that 30 years later, they're still there. And they win awards for the quality of their coffee. It's a multi-million-dollar coffee company owned by, these 3,000 families. And so, I would say that the work of fair trade is all about collaboration and team building and organizational infrastructure, organizational empowerment, and the improved livelihoods that comes from that. On a personal note, as someone who is seen as a leader in the organization where I work, Fair Trade USA, and in the fair trade movement more broadly speaking, for me personally, as kind of an elder in this movement, I'm often looked to as a guru and as a source of wisdom. And I constantly have to remind myself that I am still, after all this time, very much on my own learning journey, and that it's important to be humble about what I don't know. And I have a deep curiosity about what I don't know. I have a deep curiosity to listen and to learn, whether it's from my team or from farmers or workers that we work with around the world or the companies that we work with. And I love experimentation and I love failure. I love failure. I mean, it stings and it's kind of counterintuitive because no one likes to fail. But actually, I learned so much more from our failed experiments. And so, the way, in my view, to build a culture of compassion and of collaboration is to embrace curiosity and embrace the courage to fail. And so I try to do that. I don't always succeed, but I try to do that both in the organization and in the broader movement.
I really appreciate what you just shared, because that was really going to be my last question, is if there were a lesson that you would like to share with leaders out there, whether they're running their own social impact organization or working inside an organization as an entrepreneur and a change agent, what are some of the things the mottos that you live by? Perhaps it's a quote, perhaps it's just what you've learned yourself. And can the good guys win? Can being compassionate and empathetic and leading with your heart, can you win when you look at the outcomes that you desire to create change in the world? I'd love your perspective on that as we close out.
Yeah, of course. Well, I don't know if this is a motto or not, but what I believe to be true and what kind of keeps me going is the belief that as change makers, we have to have the courage to challenge our assumptions and our beliefs and our models, our organizations, our peers, our teams. We have to have the courage to challenge ourselves and not get too comfortable with what we built or with what is. And then we have to have the creativity and the ingenuity to not only dream of something better, but then try and create it. And that necessarily is going to lead to failure. But it's my experience that no failure is final. That if we embrace failure, we have such a powerful opportunity to learn and to improve what we're doing. And that iterative process of, experiment, learn, and improve is, the essence not only of invention, product invention, but also social invention and social change as well. One of my favorite quotes, overused perhaps, is the arc of the moral universe is long, but it bends towards justice. And what that quote says to me is that we shall overcome. We will prevail. It's a long-term struggle. It's a marathon. Social change, environmental sustainability, these are generational struggles. And I definitely feel like in the fair trade movement, my colleagues and I stand on the shoulders of those who have come before us, and we are simply running our leg of the race. And I'm really inspired by millennials and Gen Z social change agents who are kind of taking the baton from us and taking it forward. And I'm really inspired by the data, which shows that millennials and Gen Z people are even more engaged around social justice, social issues, and environmental sustainability than their predecessors. And so that, I believe, gives us all a glimpse of our collective future. And it's inspiring to me, and it gives me hope. Sometimes the struggle, the last 4 years have been a real struggle in this country under the weight of the Trump administration. And, I'm feeling a little bit more momentarily hopeful, but I'm always hopeful in the long term. I'm always hopeful and confident, actually, in our capacity as a species, as a society, to slowly but surely address these issues of poverty and exploitation and discrimination and environmental degradation and make things better. And we don't have a choice. We must lean in. We must do our part.
Paul, what I really appreciate about you and what you said is that you are not sugarcoating this. This is hard and systemic and generational. And we could easily lose hope. We could easily just surrender and say, let me just live out my life. My sun is setting. Just leave it up to the rest of the world to figure it out. But you and your organization and people like you, change makers, change agents all over the world, have said, no, if we're alive and we're here, we have this responsibility. But it's a choice that we make to own this responsibility, to move forward and to create and do something good and something powerful. So I want to say thank you to your entire organization, to all of the stakeholders involved, your farmers, your partners, for the work that you do. and for bringing your wisdom to Generation Xers like myself and beyond, those that are listening to this podcast and our movement, because it is a marathon, and the wisdom and the knowledge you share with us is like passing on the baton. And the optimism also continues to fuel our hope, because sometimes it feels so hopeless. So thank you.
Oh, you're welcome. Can I, before we sign off, can I share with you what I'm most excited about today?
Yes, please.
So our latest experiment, our latest initiative in the Fair Trade certification is we're certifying now dairy farms here in the United States in order to bring better livelihoods and better environmental stewardship to small dairy farmers and also to the farm workers on those dairy farms. It's never been done before, so it's really exciting. Our market partner is yogurt company Chobani, and we'll see if we can. No, it's a little blurry. Let's see if that works.
No, push it closer. But there it is. There it is. Right in front of your face. We could see it. There.
You see it?
Perfect. Yes.
And you see the Fair Trade label?
Yes, we can. That's awesome.
Barely. Oh my. The blurriness is weird. But anyway, Chobani yogurt is now Fair Trade, and we're just so proud of Chobani and so proud of the dairy farmers across the country that are participating in this program. It's a hard industry. It's a hard job. And, there's so many issues, from the wages and working conditions of the workers to the environmental impact and the animal welfare. And so we're just really proud to have been invited in by Chobani and to have a chance to make a little bit of a difference. So I'm so excited about it. And I hope our listeners will go out now and look for Chobani Fair Trade yogurt, because if they buy it, more companies will want to join.
Yes, and look for all of the Fair Trade logos. Thank you so much, Paul. Please let us know what's the best place for folks to learn more about all the up and coming opportunities and experiences. Maybe perhaps they can get involved. Let us know what's the best website for people to find you.
Yeah, absolutely. Fairtradecertified.org is our site, and you can learn a lot about all the different fair trade products that are now certified, and other ways to get involved to help spread the word and build the movement. We need your help.
Thank you so much. Thank you. We are so grateful for the opportunity to have another chance at speaking with you and bringing your wisdom to the public, and sharing the importance of the work that we must do as a collective human race. Thank you very much, Paul, for your time. For everyone who is tuning in and a part of our community, thank you for sticking with us through beyond COVID. We appreciate you for listening, for coming to our events, for uplifting our entire community. Please tune in next time. And if you are interested in learning more about building your C3 culture, please find out more at SOAR, SOAR, communitynetwork.com. And if you want to be a part of our membership resource hub for transcendent leaders, visit us at nebula.soarcommunitynetwork.com. Thank you, everyone, for your time. We'll talk to you real soon. Thank you again, Paul.
Thank you so much.